Hello and welcome from Trey's studio. We're going to build on the last podcast that we did, which was about 2 weeks ago. And it was to do with a moment that Trey had where she suddenly had a light bulb moment where she'd realised that it wasn't wrong to spend 3 hours or more doing something that she enjoyed at the expense of the cleaning.
Yeah.
Is that right, Trey?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah?
Definitely.
Now, we've moved on 2 weeks now. When I asked her the question earlier on there, what's changed since then? Obviously, 2 weeks is not a long time to have any changes, but did she think about that we talked about?
Yeah.
And of course, she obviously hadn't thought about it because she had no fucking idea what we were talking about.
I've been poorly.
But, didn't mention that, Trey. But we discussed off podcast about that situation, and it brings in a lot of stuff as well other people experience at the moment. It isn't just an anomaly to Trey. Anxiety, and when she goes out, the feelings of anxiety and needing to get back to a place of safety, which is her home. But the awareness itself of those situations, how she's feeling that way, we talked about it's actually quite useful to be aware.
Yeah.
And that is actually an outcome from that moment, that light bulb moment that you had. So we're going to talk a little bit more now around, and I did mention this last time, about anxiety itself, and it affects all of us. I think more so with these lockdowns, more people have had more time to perhaps spend time on their own, and then suddenly we're back into all these people around, all these cars around. I know I've been affected by that because I was in Carlisle recently, and it was an absolute nightmare because it was almost like people were throwing themselves at you and there was crowds of people and cars going past, and I was quite reluctant to go into that. But when I got into a more open area, I felt more relaxed. So we talked about that being quite natural, didn't we?
Yes, it is natural, and that when I leave my house, any time I do leave my house, there is certain things that are coming up regular, and that's antisocial behaviour in public, of people, gangs, or maybe somebody under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Even you can tell it, and then there's behaviour that's unsettling. And I like to go for walks, I like to go to parks and nature areas, but I'm finding, because when I leave the house every single time I'm coming across these, it's put me off. I don't feel comfortable. So I'll maybe just go to a shop when I have to, and then I get back indoors.
Do you think you're alone?
No, I don't think I'm alone, and I think it's more acute possibly as well because you've had a time when there hasn't been a lot of people around, so you've had some time where you weren't dealing with that in the public, outside and that, and now suddenly we're back to a lot more people around and we're back to this antisocial behaviour, so you realise just how unpleasant it is.
Do you think pre-lockdowns that things were any different?
No. But I think in some ways we just got used to dealing with it. Or, mind you, I always found it difficult. But I think it's even worse now because you've had a little bit of time away from it and then suddenly you've been thrown into it, and I don't want it. I don't want that kind of behaviour around me.
But is it wrong to not want that?
No, I think it's natural to not want that. And I think it's a shame that people are having to deal with that. That shouldn't be how it is. I don't feel it should be that way. Everybody should feel comfortable when they're out and about. I
think I mentioned earlier, it's a big problem in society now anyway, and we're not making this out to be really miserable and morose or whatever. This is real life. This is what's going on. You're more likely now to encounter loud people swearing quite openly. You're going to see more people walk around with alcohol. It's quite normal now to see groups. There's catchment areas where you see people who are loud and brash, and they're drinking, or they've been drinking, or they're going to drink, and this quite often is in the morning. You've got Wetherspoons there, and regularly if I've gone past the one in Whitehaven, you've got a pub right next door to that, and you see people outside giving it all this, and pubs in the marketplace in Whitehaven at times where you wouldn't expect that to happen. People trying to walk past on the pavement, people are outside smoking, effing and blind and shouting and carrying on. You're thinking, wait a minute, it's only about 11 o'clock here.
Well, even before that, I tend to try and get to the shops by when they open at 9 o'clock, and even then, you've got people staggering up the Rubicon at 9 o'clock in the morning, probably been from the day before. It's, and because the roads are busy, you can't always get across the road to get out of the way. You've got to go through them. In shops, I was in a shop yesterday, and somebody was obviously under the influence, was standing eating a carton meal propped up against a freezer on the inside of the shop, which had narrow corridors. People wanted stuff on that corridor, but wouldn't go anywhere near him. This is in a shop, I thought, I wish I didn't have to deal with this. So I didn't get everything I wanted. I came back early.
So do you think even without the lockdowns, society's been changing quite drastically in relation to social etiquette for quite a while now?
It has.
So if you've already got anxiety, you're more likely to be acutely aware of that and be affected by that, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I think when you have a heightened or overdeveloped fight or flight, you tend to become aware of things. That side of your brain becomes aware of it before you do, because it's constantly scanning. So it's almost like, wait a minute, what's that? And it's picked it up before you've picked it up, and then you realise it's a problem. You want, like, how fast can I walk to get down here to get over there?
So then you get a situation where people who don't mind that and are part of that will say to you, "Oh, what's your problem? For God's sake, people are only enjoying themselves."
Yeah.
Is that condonement of that kind of behaviour that affects yourself?
Yes, I do believe it is. I think it's become something that people ignore rather than it's being dealt with, and it is quite distressing to be in that. What I don't understand and why I find it quite strange is I have been attacked in public by people who are under the influence, because it can happen. I know it can happen because it's happened to me. So why would you ignore it? Why would it not be dealt with?
This sounds familiar to one of your counselling sessions, does it not?
Oh, yeah.
And what was the inference from a particular person in one of those sessions about what we just talked about when you're out and about and potential?
It was. Is it really a threat? Are the instances really anything to be bothered about?
So what is the inference there then?
That I've got the problem. I see that as there's nothing wrong with that. I'm the problem.
So then we go back to the question I asked you before, where do you find that people who don't mind all the Ibiza type culture and drinking and shouting and talking in loud voices, do you think that is also condonement coupled with the counselling world? Do they also see people who? Yeah,
I think the onus goes on to the person who finds it a problem to deal with it. They find a way to deal with it rather than dealing with the actual problem. The actual problem is people are being antisocial. It shouldn't be my responsibility to adapt how I react to that, because I'm not the one that's doing it. I'm suffering because of it. I'm not making life difficult for other people. They're making life difficult for me and others. I'm sure others feel the same way.
So do you think it creates more anxiety then for the people who are acutely aware of what's going on and it affects them in different ways? It makes them anxious?
I can imagine it would. It does me. So from my experience, I would have thought it would. I would have thought you've got to be really dig in to be able to do anything on a day-to-day basis. Travelling anywhere, going outside anywhere. If it happens in the street outside, you're going to be unsettled.
So we talked about awareness as a tool.
Yeah.
Now, what about the acceptance that it's quite natural to feel that way? Is that a tool?
Yes. I think the acceptance, you've got to accept that it is going to affect you, and also it's not your fault. You know, it's not your responsibility. You aren't doing it. It's what's happening to you from an outside source. That helps a bit. Being aware that you are anxious and finding a way to react to that in a way that makes you feel safer and better, which is probably what I'm doing when I'm getting out of the way.
So it's not about changing yourself, because obviously society, if it's creating those problems, it needs to change.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I've said for quite a while now. But changes that you could make for yourself in those situations, are they necessarily cognitive?
It's instinctive to me. I'm literally moving before I'm thinking about moving.
So it creates an emotion within you,
Yeah,
and that emotion leads to fear and the need to get away from
yeah,
what is meant to feel uncomfortable. So if I said to you, right, okay, well, don't think that way, think, oh, well, they're just having a good time, and then just move on, is that going to help?
no. Because thought doesn't come into it. You're reacting emotionally and instinctually before thought comes into it, and then you're trying to think through that. Well, it doesn't work, because I've tried. Your instincts are driving you. Where does thought come into it? Where does logic come into that? You're fighting against that part of yourself, that instinctual part of yourself. So it's, for me, I have to just go with the instinct until I can think.
So just, I was thinking there, well, you know, obviously law and order has to rectify antisocial behaviour,
Yeah.
and clearly it's struggling because it's under-resourced. The actual staff is a lot less than it used to be, although they are talking about training people up to become police in the next God knows how many years, but then how they're going to rectify that, because they're actually going to be up to the number they should have been up to before, but now there's more disorder to deal with, so therefore they need more people, and it's never going to happen. But take, for instance, the law dealing with a relationship where a woman likes somebody, but then suddenly they become quite, so what I can use, not assertive, very overpowering in a sexual way, and then this person feels frightened and needs to stop it and to get away, and then it becomes an issue, and then that person who's being restrained sees that as not something they want, and they're trying to get away. They end up in a situation where they've been assaulted, and then they go to the police. What normally happens, because a lot of these cases have been coming to the fore, and a lot of, move on to the Prince Andrew thing at the moment now, you know, I mean, he's been allowed to hide away with mummy in a castle in Scotland, which was nicked off the Scots, by the way, you know, and he has coerced a young woman into doing something she didn't necessarily want to do, but she felt as though, you know, she had to go along with it. And then many years after, she's realised that actually, no, this was wrong, and he's now trying to run away from it. We're looking at antisocial behaviour, and we're looking at the condonement of that and the acceptance of that. That's all right. Is it the same in that area as well, where the law isn't really dealing with it? It's kind of more going with it, and it's, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't have got in that situation in the first place, which I've heard about this lady who's involved with that Prince Andrew situation. You know, why was she there in the first place? Is that not the kind of condonement of what he's done?
Yeah, because it's not recognising that people can be abused in that way, not seeing it as abuse, and it's control and a conditioning. So these people, women are getting into situations they can't get out of because the strength's been taken away, the power's been taken away, and that's the same situations. You have somebody stuck in a abusive marriage where there's conditioning and that kind of thing. There is, to me, the law isn't strong enough on that at all.
So if you're going from A to B, and I know this with Nigel where he lives because he's surrounded by numpties, antisocial behaviour, you go to the police, and I mean, I was lucky because we got a situation dealt with for Nigel, something that was occurring on a regular basis, and I was looking to get someone that actually dealt with it. But on the whole, it's, well, you know, it's just that I've had a bit of a laugh, having a few drinks, they're okay. Now, if you went to the police and said, look, every time I go down that road to go to the shops, these people are drinking and they're shouting and effing and blind, and it's disturbing, making me anxious. What's the normal reaction from the police?
Nothing they can do about it. There isn't anything they can do about it because they're not breaking the law as such. It's not really considered that bad of a situation.
Now, antisocial behaviour is what it is, and it disturbs other people.
Yeah.
Now, it's gone wrong now because, again, the rights and all the rest of the rubbish is coming to it now. But if you walk up a main street in the town that you live in, and people are regularly getting drunk and effing and blind and shouting, and it makes you upset and anxious, that's antisocial behaviour. And it used to be dealt with accordingly. And these people would be moved on, or they'd be charged, or something would happen. Now it's just flipping towns for them now. So you're dealing with what's natural. You're accepting it's natural.
Yeah.
You're obviously totally aware of how it's making you feel. But what can you do?
There's nothing you can do about that situation because I'm not in control of what they do and what's not being done to control it. All I can do is try and keep myself safe and emotionally trying to deal with the anxiety it causes. And the only way I can do that is get myself out of the situation, out of that area, away from it. And then I come back and sit and relax with a cup of tea with my doors locked.
Yeah, you can imagine then you add on another 20 odd years to your age.
Yeah.
And you pop into the shops with your friends and you encounter that. How must that
It'd be
feel?
awful. And I know that in the past when I worked in housing, older people suffered with that because there were gangs of kids on the estates and they were frightened to walk past them. But there wasn't anything that was done about it because they said, oh, well, that's just the way it is. So they had to suffer that or not go out.
So we've come round from a number of things, and I think you're very aware now that you're not an anomaly.
Yeah.
This is a societal problem. It's something that should have been dealt with years and years ago, and it hasn't been. It still hasn't been. We've devolved the police force to literally little people wandering around when they feel like wandering around, or running around in vans at the weekend. Don't know where they go to, they're running around in vans anywhere. You haven't really got any community policemen now. You've got the, what they call the, community, what's the name?
I don't know.
Support officers.
Yeah, they aren't police, are they?
Yeah, so we banged in some community support police who haven't got the same powers
No, they don't.
that the police have got, the actual police, but the actual police have lost a lot of their powers as well.
Yeah.
So you've got them when they're out and about, walking into city centres, town centres or whatever, with all this problem still going on.
Yeah.
So really, your situation at the moment is quite normal. It's quite natural. You don't have to have had trauma to feel that way, but you will be more acutely aware of it and it will affect you more.
Yeah.
So we've discovered now that it is a problem out there, right? Not just for you, but for other people as well. Let's look at what people can do, that you do, that can maybe help them feel better about themselves. Because I know at one time Nigel got quite agoraphobic, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And he wouldn't go out because he was frightened. It took quite a while to get him to go out. He still has those attacks sometimes. He'd panic a little bit if he sees a gang of lads at the end of the road. So what would you say to people listening now who are struggling in similar ways to yourself?
That's it. I think the only thing I would suggest, what I try to do, is try to make myself better about myself. Now, one of the things I find a problem for me is if I'm ill and I feel weak, I feel more vulnerable. So I have found that doing exercise and feeling better in myself makes me feel a bit more confident and comfortable with myself. So I'm more aware I can get out of a situation. Whereas if I'm weaker and physically weaker, I would struggle Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
That's helped me a
But
bit.
would it be wrong to contain yourself more during those periods when you're not feeling yourself?
Oh, no. I mean, I don't leave the house for days at a time, and it doesn't bother me. It just doesn't. I only go out when I have to, or I feel comfortable in doing so. It doesn't bother me at all.
So again, it's not wrong to have those periods.
No. I mean, if I'm feeling vulnerable, I definitely don't go out. If say, like for instance, I was ill recently and I just didn't want to go out. I knew I wouldn't be able to cope. I didn't go out for a week. I just rested till I got cabin fever, and then I decided I really do need to go and get some bread.
So if we go back to what we said about people inferring that you were creating a lot of these situations yourself.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a case in point where before you leave the house you shouldn't be thinking too much about what might happen and wait until you possibly encounter something like that?
Well, I don't actually think about it. I go out thinking I'm going to go and enjoy a walk in the park. I'm looking forward to doing it because I know it makes me feel better. It's just, and that can be fine. I can get in the park and it's great. I'm sitting there and I'm enjoying the birds, and then I think, oh, that's all right. I've enjoyed that. I'll go a bit further, and then something happens and think, right, I'm not enjoying it now. I'm going back. But so no, I go out. You know, I don't tend to. I tend to be quite a fast walker. I like to stride out, and I mean, you know, I'm fine until I eat something, and then I'm not fine.
So we discussed this downstairs, and I mentioned about me being quite kind of anal and quite nitpicky about things. Now, I personally, before I go out, it's a bit like the old days where I used to go to competitions and, you know, to get my mindset right before I fought. I actually think, right, okay, what am I going to do if I feel a certain way?
Yeah.
Right. What if I have to walk down a street and I see a bunch of idiots carrying on, full of drink, standing right across the pavement? Am I going to batter them, or am I going to try to keep away from that situation? So I actually mentally prepare myself before I go out.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is to do with my anger, because I cannot tolerate people who are antisocial. I have to wipe them out, or
Yeah.
and that is tied in quite strongly with the fear and the anxiety and the trauma. So for me personally, I don't just go out, right? Like Carlisle, I was prepared before I went to Carlisle. I was prepared before I got on that bus, and it wasn't aware that, oh, right, I need to do this, because that would only create more anxiety.
Yeah.
But what I do is make sure that I'm ready for that potential anxiety. So I map these things out before I actually go out.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea then, actually.
Well, it's training that was introduced in karate. Did I ever mention about karate? Yeah, you had to mentally prepare yourself for anything that would come at you, and not to, you know, assume it wouldn't happen. Because then, if say suddenly somebody hit you very hard somewhere you weren't expecting, it created fear and pain and distress, which would then probably give them a chance to beat you.
Yeah.
It'd be too late then. But like any good fighter, they prepare for stuff like that. They'll have a coach, a trainer who batter them in the ring and hit them wherever they can. Just that spontaneity. They have to learn to be able to move away from that. It's the same mental work you do when you're trying to avoid antisocial situations.
Yeah.
You have to be ready for the emotions that it creates. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's a form of mental training. And it's got to be done in a way that's right, not fearful. Oh God, if I go up there, that might happen. Oh God, if I do that, right? Okay, I might encounter a bunch of idiots full of drink. Yeah, how's it going to make me feel? Well, I'll be angry. I'll be pissed off. I'll be quite anxious as well, and that's that mental preparation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it might be you've gone out and the sun's shining and you meet a few people you haven't seen for a long time and everything's cool.
Yeah.
But then it might not be. And you've already brought with you the tools that I've talked about before. Like, okay, I don't need to get angry because it's not my problem.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, and we discussed this before, you end up embroiled in something and then the anger's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it will keep you safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. And I tell you what I do tend to do as well. I don't stop myself walking down certain roads that I might encounter because I'm thinking, right, I'm not going to let that beat me. I'm going to walk down that road.
Yeah.
And I think when I want to go out for a walk and I want to go through the park, I'll go through the park. It's just that if I say an obvious, all right, then that's going to be a bit noisy. I'll go this way instead. But I was getting into the habit of going out more to face that, because you can get agoraphobic and you just don't want to face it. But if I have been feeling a bit vulnerable of late because I wasn't well, so I tend to know my limits. I can't cope with both.
Well, that's sensible. If I felt that way, I wouldn't go into a city.
Yeah.
Because I know what to expect, really.
Yeah. So it's just a frustration for me, I think, as well. Because I just want to be able to do what I want, and that's everybody's right, isn't it? To be able to freely and happily and safely go for
Well, it is, but unfortunately,
but that's not the way it's working.
No, it isn't. I mean, that thing now about the women's rights to feel safe, and that poor lady was killed, God love her, by that idiot policeman. Well, obviously police or security, I can't remember what he was now. It's almost not necessarily frowned upon, but it's not really given sufficient credence.
Yeah.
When that tennis player won a tennis match, won a final, Emma Raducanu, that's not the right name, by the way. Suddenly, all this media's all splashed across, and she's wonderful, and give her an OBE, and the Queen's going to meet her, Prince William, and Harry's going to fly across from America and meet her as well. It's all wonderful. But then you get these women who are fighting for the right to be looked after and freedom, all the rest of it. Oh, well, a bunch of nutters.
Yeah.
When actually this is really crucial.
It is. It is crucial. I think it's wrong that society just ignores the things that happen to women and what they have to endure. You're making sure you've got your keys in your hand before you even get to your front door, so that you're not faffing around with your key to get in. There's things that a woman thinks about that men probably don't think about. And it's always been like that in my lifetime, and that's a shame. It shouldn't be like that still. It
shouldn't, but again, we go back to the law enforcement and the deterrence.
Yeah.
Let's have more people put to death who've actually been proven without a shadow of a doubt that they've killed someone so horribly, left the family in distress as well. I think we're going to round off now.
Yeah.
Because I think we've gone into areas that need to be expanded upon again in the next podcast. Do you want to sum up?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is the anxiety that can be caused when you go out and you're dealing with antisocial behaviour, which adds to the already difficult situation. You're going out in crowds and feeling uncomfortable about that anyway because of the COVID situation. And being aware of that and, like I say, mentally preparing yourself before you go out, and also how you deal with that when you're out. So it's finding ways to be able to deal with that, and it's okay to feel that way because it's perfectly natural, even if you don't suffer from trauma. And also it's okay if there's times you don't want to go out because you feel vulnerable in yourself, and maybe physically or emotionally. Go out when you're feeling stronger. And
you mentioned earlier, just to tie in with that your training, your physical training, is a crucial part of that toolbox you've got to deal with those occurrences.
Yeah.
And you'd said there that by keeping yourself fit, it made you feel better about yourself and stronger.
You move differently. I think when you're feeling strong in yourself, you move differently. You have a better posture, your stride, you look strong, and you're less likely to. And I remember this years ago, my mum said to me, "Never look like a victim." And it's that thing, you don't look like a victim, so you're less likely to get as much bother.
Oh yeah.
So I actually like that, and I've always tried to be, that way. But when you physically feel weak, you can't, because you are physically weak. So that's where the exercises help me.
Do you think the mental training would help?
Oh yes, yeah.
Because I touched on that earlier, didn't I?
Yeah. And that's one I struggle with a little bit, but the mental focus I need for the physical training has helped as well. That's improved that. Yeah, I mean, my mum had a point.
That's true.
If you look like a victim, you get treated like one.
Most bullies will only go for people who don't look threatening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying everybody's going to walk around looking threatening, but threatening to them is somebody who might actually not put up with that.
Yeah.
You know, and they might get a battering themselves because they're normally in groups. You know, I mean, there was a bloke actually raped in some woods. Was it about 4 or 5 weeks ago? I can't remember now. 2 blokes got him. He was only young. Now his life's ruined now.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's not just women that get in those situations. It's also men as well now.
Yeah.
Because of the homosexuality is more out there now.
Yeah.
You know, people are doing those horrible things. But I do think that the mental training is something that needs to be incorporated into people's everyday activities.
Yeah.
Because emotions can hit you sometimes when you least expect it. And if you're not mentally prepared when you go out thinking, well, I could be hit with something here,
Yeah.
fear, you know, whatever.
It can be overwhelming.
Exactly, yeah. And of course, when you're overwhelmed, what happens?
Or you panic,
And you become
anxious,
and
frightened, and
vulnerable.
and you're running away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you don't really want to get into that situation because that's
No.
just detrimental because you'll come back actually wounded basically
Yeah.
and you start all over again. So I would definitely, if anybody listening, do some mental training.
Yeah.
And I don't mean going to Carlton Clinic and spending a week there, but just look at how you think. Not the CBT because that's
No.
changed the way you think, but look at what you can add into that preparation before you go into potential situations. And you know, it's something the special forces do anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and you see, well, maybe not on the Celebrity SES, but you know, they prepare for every possible thing that could go wrong.
Yeah.
So they're ready for it. They don't live with it, they're just ready for it because they've done the training.
Yeah.
It's the same if you're going to the shops and maybe Saturday when you get more idiots around, you know, mentally prepare before you go out.
Yeah.
Right, what am I going to do if I feel like that? Right, this is what I'm going to do. And you're ready for it.
Yeah.
You know, it might be, I'm going to batter them. Right? Because you maybe spend 10 minutes on the punch bag and you feel quite strong and fit. And you get in there and then all of a sudden there's this moment where you think, well, actually, no, if I start battering them, I might get bad as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that. That's part of the mental preparation
Yes,
as well.
it is, yeah.
Because the anger is losing control. Always remember that.
Yeah.
You know, once you get angry, you've got to a point where you're too high. You've got to come down and take that control back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Definitely.
So, Trey did round off earlier, and typical me, I started talking again. But I do think that this is quite a commonality now, and although it's tied in with Trey's journey through trauma, it really is something that everybody needs to be aware of.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely.
and if you are starting to feel more anxious now because of the lockdowns, one of the things which I must add that creates anxiety for me at the moment is these idiots who stand in shops not wearing masks.
Yeah.
I'm Johnny No Mates with my little mask on and my hand gel, and no fecker else in the shop's got a mask on.
Yeah.
Now that makes me anxious. The bus, I was the only one with a mask on.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of...
Not even the bus driver had a mask on.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm like, oh God, you know, I'm looking, not in a paranoid way, but that created anxiety for me because I think, well, whoa. And the other thing is as well, what people are doing now, if they encounter that, they also take theirs off.
Yeah.
So it's like a, you know,
Yeah.
snowball effect. So I'm in the Johnny No Mates, the only one walking around with a mask, and now they're talking about bringing them back.
They should never have stopped people wearing masks.
Crazy. I mean, I'm more anxious because of the asthma.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't want to be ending up in hospital upside down, facing down with a ventilator thing, you know, because that's just a worst case scenario there. But many people are running those risks.
Yeah, they are. I've noticed that, they definitely are.
But we'll come back to the theme, and there'll be many other themes as well. It's not just the only one that we're going to explore, there's going to be many more as well. So look forward to it next time we meet up. Well, not meet up, but talk up, communicate up, some kind of up.
Chat!
And I hope you gleaned something from this, and then we'll be back again at some point and on.
Yes, definitely.
Okay,
Okay.
Trey? Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap.
Thank you.